The words fell out of the phone speaker, ice cold and utterly final. We only invited special people. I stood in my quiet, sunlit kitchen in Richmond, Virginia, staring at the screen where Liddy's face was visible. Not tearful, not apologetic, but smug, her chin tilted in victory. I had called my son, Etienne, expecting to confirm the rehearsal dinner details, and instead, I had been informed, with chilling clarity, that the wedding was already over. Yesterday. My lungs seized up, the air stolen by the sheer, devastating cruelty of the insult. I, René Dubois, who had provided their stability, paid their $500 monthly rent for 3 years, and ensured their refrigerator was never empty, was not special. I was merely a resource, and my purpose was now apparently fulfilled. Etienne, my only child, hovered just behind Liddy, looking anywhere but at the camera, his shame a flimsy, inadequate shield. His silence was the loudest betrayal of all. I felt the familiar burn in my chest, not just the pain of exclusion, but the searing rage of the fool I had allowed myself to become. The pale lavender dress I'd lovingly chosen for the ceremony, hanging untouched in my bedroom closet, suddenly felt like a heavy, pointless sackcloth. Before we continue this journey of betrayal and ultimate justice, tell me, have you ever felt disposable to someone you loved? Drop a quick answer in the comments, and while you're there, please let me know where you are watching from today. If this story resonates with you, give it a like and subscribe to follow René's entire reckoning. I had funded the illusion. Just last month, I'd given Liddy $800 for personal expenses, cash that undoubtedly went toward the stunning white gown I had just seen plastered all over social media in her parents' jubilant photos. I had mentally set aside a generous $1,000 gift, money meant for my own peace of mind, now earmarked for a couple who saw me as an ATM with an expiry date. The sheer scale of my self-deception, the $33,400 I had poured into their existence since Etienne left college, was a physical weight pressing down on my chest. I had traded my hard-earned security, the legacy of my late husband, Jean-Paul, for a conditional, transactional form of love that was instantly withdrawn the moment they sealed their legal bond. Liddy broke the silence again, her voice saccharine. Don't be dramatic, René. It was never about you. It was about us. You're still welcome to send the gift, of course. It was a callous, perfect summary of our relationship. My money was still required, but my presence was toxic. I fought the urge to smash the phone against the countertop, to unleash the torrent of grief and accusation that was bubbling in my throat. Instead, an unnatural, steely calm took hold. It was the clarity that comes only from hitting rock bottom. For 3 years, I had walked on eggshells, a perfect, obliging provider, desperately hoping my utility would translate into genuine affection. I had allowed them to treat my love as a commodity. Now, looking at Etienne's averted gaze and Liddy's triumphant sneer, I saw the truth unmasked. My silence lengthened, stretching the space between us until it snapped, not with a sob, but with a quiet, decisive click. I wasn't just losing my son. I was witnessing the painful death of the naive mother who had sacrificed her dignity for an illusion of familial closeness. I carefully lifted the phone and terminated the call, letting Liddy hear the decisive snap of the connection. I knew they would interpret it as a moment of stunned, helpless defeat. They were wrong. The silence that enveloped my home when the line went dead was deafening, yet strangely purifying. It wasn't the silence of emptiness, but the sound of a slate being wiped clean. I walked away from the kitchen, my movements stiff, feeling the years of emotional suppression beginning to crack. I sat down on my armchair, the worn, comfortable fabric, a reminder of the simple comforts I had forgone for their sake. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I began to calculate. I needed the final, precise figure of my financial foolishness, a monument to the betrayal. Rent, food, cars, emergencies, furniture, the number, $33,400, etched itself into my memory. This was the principal I had invested, and now I would determine the terms of the withdrawal. My phone vibrated again, Etienne's name flashing. "Mom, please call back. It's not what you think." I swiped the notification away. The moment for emotional appeals was over. A week passed in a blur of cold, controlled anger and strategic planning. I didn't answer their calls. I didn't reply to their texts. I let the silence become my answer. Then, 7 days after the humiliation, the phone rang, and the frantic urgency in the sound was unmistakable. It was Liddy, but the confident smirk had been replaced by a desperate tremor. "Renee, you must answer. It's the rent. It's 2 months overdue. The landlord is threatening eviction. You forgot the transfer. You have to go to the bank today." I picked up the phone, and my voice, when I spoke, was calm, surgical, and utterly devoid of warmth. "Liddy," I said, pausing just long enough to let the panic set in. "Didn't I warn you? I only help special people." The resulting silence on the line was the sweetest sound I had heard in years. For the first time, it was not I who was trembling, but her. The stunned silence from the other end of the line was instantaneous, thick, and immensely satisfying. It was the sound of a perfectly functioning machine abruptly seizing up. Liddy stammered, scrambling for her old lines. "Renee, I don't understand. We were always special to you. You're like a second mother to me. You know that." The sheer lack of self-awareness was staggering, almost comical. She genuinely believed a tired platitude could bridge the chasm of their recent, brutal disrespect. "Liddy," I cut her off, my tone flat. "The transfers are canceled, all of them. Rent, groceries, allowance, effective immediately." I heard a sharp, desperate gasp, not of hurt, but of genuine financial terror. My son's frantic, distant query followed. "What did she say?" I disconnected the call, sealing the tomb of my old, sacrificial self. I knew they would try again, with tears, with anger, with Etienne's wounded child voice. But the lock had been thrown. The emotional bond that had served as their endless line of credit had just been officially severed, and the sudden realization that their secure, adult lives were entirely contingent upon my willingness to be excluded must have been hitting them like a physical wall. I walked through my modest Richmond house, the sun filtering through the window, illuminating the dust motes in the air. This house, the one I had scrimped and saved to keep up while they enjoyed their high-end apartment, suddenly felt like a fortress. I poured myself a second cup of coffee, the aroma a comforting anchor in the suddenly clear waters of my life. I went to the oak table where I'd planned countless strategies to protect their financial facade and spread out the bank statements. I had to face the numbers again, not to mourn, but to internalize the cost of my foolishness. The full $33,400 was not just a dollar amount, it was years of my future, the dream of traveling, the comfort of knowing I was truly secure. I realized that my financial support hadn't helped them grow. It had arrested their development, trapping them in a parasitic dependency. Every cent was an invisible shackle, and I had been wearing one end of the chain. The phone flashed Etienne's name repeatedly, followed by a flurry of texts that shifted rapidly in tone, from angry demands to pleading apologies. "Mom, you're being irrational," followed by, "Mom, I am so sorry about the wedding. It was a mistake, please." I ignored them all. I was not being irrational. I was finally being rational. I was not being cruel. I was simply refusing to be abused. I knew their crisis wasn't an emotional one. It was a property one. The landlord had called. The final threat had been issued, and their well-crafted life was collapsing. This wasn't a problem I could or should fix. Instead of rushing to the bank, I put on a light jacket and decided to execute my next strategic move, a physical declaration of independence. I would go to the bank, but not to transfer funds, to finalize the cancellation. I drove down the familiar streets toward the Carey Street Bank branch. Seeing the brick building, where Mr. Kalin, the branch manager, had been the silent witness to my systematic financial self-destruction, felt momentous. I walked past the usual queue, directly to his office. Mr. Kalin looked up, his expression a mix of sympathy and professionalism. "Mrs. Dubois, your son called. He sounds very distressed." I gave him a small, controlled smile. "He is distressed that the bank is no longer his primary source of income, Mr. Kalin. I am here to ensure that remains the case." I signed the final documents, changing all my access codes and placing a formal block on any account inquiries from either Etienne or Liddy. The pen in my hand felt heavy, not with sadness, but with the weight of absolute authority. When I left the bank, the late afternoon sun felt warmer, the air lighter. I had just taken back my future. The constant low-level drone of anxiety that had shadowed my days was gone. I felt strangely euphoric, a sensation that bordered on reckless. I drove past the park, where I used to take Etienne as a boy, remembering the unconditional, unbought affection of his childhood. When did I start allowing them to monetize my love? When did I accept that my value was only measurable in dollars? The self-recrimination was a necessary sting, a reminder of the lesson learned. I decided to make a spontaneous detour to a salon I'd always admired in the Fan district. A small, extravagant splurge I'd denied myself for years because their emergencies always took precedence. I was done prioritizing the wants of the ungrateful over the needs of myself. As the stylist, a kind young woman named Cynthia, began to wash my hair, the sudden stillness and focus felt like therapy. It was a conversation about me, about color and style, not about rent and due dates. When I looked in the mirror, my newly styled hair framed a face that was still tired, yes, but undeniably sharper, harder. "You look beautiful, Mrs. Dubois," Cynthia said, holding up the mirror. "You look like you just won a major fight." I smiled, a genuine, powerful smile. "I did, Cynthia. I finally learned how to fight for myself." Driving home, I felt a powerful sense of clarity. But as I turned onto my street, the triumphant mood dissolved into a cold, hard dread. 3 cars were parked haphazardly outside my house: Etienne's car, Liddy's small SUV, and a third, unfamiliar black sedan. My blood ran cold. They hadn't come to apologize. They had keys. They were inside. The financial siege had just escalated into a physical, legal confrontation. The sight of the unfamiliar black sedan, sleek, expensive, and utterly out of place on my quiet Richmond street, was all the confirmation I needed. This wasn't a desperate plea. It was a planned, hostile takeover. They hadn't just come to beg for money. They had brought reinforcements. My heart didn't race. It plummeted, cold and heavy, realizing the true nature of their malice. I pulled my car to the curb, but didn't open the door. I sat there, gripping the wheel, watching the subtle movement behind my living room window. They were inside my house, moving through the rooms I had preserved, discussing my finances, without my knowledge or permission. The violation felt absolute. I had foolishly given Etienne a spare key years ago, a symbolic gesture of trust and permanence. Now, it was a weapon turned against me. I reached into my purse, not for my phone, but for the business card of Mr. Weber, the attorney who had handled Jean-Paul's estate. I took a deep, fortifying breath, and stepped out, walking slowly up the front path. The crunch of gravel under my shoes sounded deafeningly loud. I unlocked my front door, pushing it open to find the exact, horrifying scene my gut had predicted. Etienne was slumped on the sofa, the one I'd purchased, his head in his hands, radiating theatrical despair. Liddy was pacing like a caged animal, her voice low and furious. And at my dining table, sorting through a pile of documents that looked suspiciously like my private papers, sat a man in a crisp gray suit with the detached, professional calm of a predator. I recognized my insurance policy, my husband's death certificate, and my retirement statements among the scattered pages. The sight was instantly clarifying. This wasn't a family visit. This was an ambush. "What is happening here?" My voice was low, resonating with a cold, unnatural calm that surprised even me. All three heads snapped up. Liddy rushed toward me, adopting the performance of frantic concern. "Renee, thank God! We were so worried! We couldn't reach you!" "Mr. Fisher is from the law firm we consulted about your situation?" "My situation?" The question was simple, but loaded with a lifetime of resentment. "I have no situation. I am perfectly well." Etienne finally lifted his head, his face a mask of practiced concern overlaid with genuine financial panic. "Mom, we went to the bank. They cut off all the transfers. Mr. Kalin said you blocked our access. We don't understand why you did this. You've been acting very strangely." Mr. Fisher, the lawyer, stood up, extending a hand I pointedly did not take. He was polished, practiced, his smile conveying calculated sympathy. "Mrs. Dubois, I am Dr. Fisher, a family law attorney. Your children are, quite naturally, concerned for your well-being. Your recent financial decisions, the abrupt cessation of support, the isolation, are, in their view, concerning behaviors." Concerning behaviors. The phrase echoed the language of legal guardianship, the subtle opening move in a game of legal theft. They weren't seeking to help me. They were seeking to have me declared mentally incompetent so they could seize control of my assets and reinstate their allowance. I walked directly past the lawyer to the dining table, silently gathering up my documents, stacking them neatly out of his reach. This was my private history, my legacy, and he had no right to sift through it. "These are my private papers," I stated, my voice dangerously level. "You have no right to look at them. You are trespassing." Etienne stepped in, his voice taking on the condescending, patronizing tone he often used when I questioned their demands. "Mom, we're just worried. Your behavior is strange. Cutting us off without explanation, refusing to answer the phone. We think you might need professional help." Liddy moved closer, attempting the fake tenderness she reserved for moments of acute need, reaching for my hand. "Renee, honey, we know you're under stress. Maybe the loneliness is affecting you more than you think. At your age, episodes of confusion are normal." The word confusion hit me like a splash of ice water, instantly revealing their entire strategy. They wanted to strip me of my agency and install Etienne as my legal guardian. The same woman who had excluded me from their life was now trying to legally erase my mind. "I am not confused," I said, the clarity in my voice silencing all three of them. "I am clearer than I have been in years, and you, all three of you, are going to leave my house right now." "Mr. Myers?" Fisher maintained his composure, placing a folder on the table. "Mrs. Dubois, I understand you feel overwhelmed, but your children have legal options if they believe your capacity is impaired. We've prepared a power of attorney document. It would allow Etienne and Liddy to manage your finances temporarily until you feel better." I picked up the folder and, without breaking eye contact with the lawyer, tossed it directly into the trash can. "The only transition that is happening here," I declared, pointing toward the front door, "is yours to the street. Now." Liddy's composure finally shattered. She didn't cry tears of sadness, but of pure, thwarted rage. "You can't do this to us, Renee. We were counting on you. We took on financial obligations because we knew we could rely on your support." She gestured wildly around the room, implicitly claiming the furniture and the security of the life I had enabled. "Obligations based on my money," I corrected, my voice unwavering. "Not on my well-being, not on my happiness, not on my company, just on my money." The truth hung in the air, cold and undeniable. They had built their entire adult existence on my liquid assets, and now that the funding had ceased, I was suddenly the confused old woman who needed to be legally contained. Etienne rose from the sofa, the wounded boy finally giving way to the angry, entitled man. "Mom, we made mistakes. The wedding was a misunderstanding. Lena was nervous. We can fix this if you just become reasonable again." Reasonable? The word tasted like ash in my mouth. Being reasonable meant paying your rent while you treated me like a stranger. It meant pretending it didn't hurt to be excluded from my only son's life. I took a step back from Etienne. He was no longer the boy who ran to me for comfort. He was a man focused solely on the loss of his inherited comfort. Mr. Fisher, realizing the negotiation had failed, collected his briefcase with the practiced efficiency of a lawyer who knew when to retreat and prepare for the next battle. "Mrs. Dubois," he warned, his voice low and serious, "this is not over. Your family has legal options. If you are making irrational decisions, a judge can still determine that you need guardianship." His threat was not just manipulative, it was a devastating glimpse into the legal fight that awaited me. They were not interested in reconciliation. They were interested in my permanent financial disablement. Liddy, her face contorted with cold hatred, stopped at the doorway. Her voice dropped, completely shedding the mask of the loving daughter-in-law. "This won't stand, Renee. We have rights and lawyers too." "Perfect," I replied, the word clipped and final. "Hire all the lawyers you want, with your own money, of course, because mine is no longer available to finance your legal tantrums." Etienne lingered, his eyes holding a mixture of genuine sadness and bitter resentment. "Mom, this is going to end very badly for you. You're going to end up alone, with no one to take care of you when you really need it." It was the ultimate emotional blackmail. My final words to my son were spoken with a deep, crystalline sadness. "Max," I said, using his actual name for the first time in the exchange, not the transactional title. "I am already alone. The difference is that now, it's by my own choice, not by your neglect." I closed the door behind them and stood in the absolute silence of my house. The adrenaline, which had been pumping through me for the duration of the confrontation, slowly subsided, leaving behind a cold, powerful clarity. They were gone, but they had activated a genuine threat. This was no longer just about cutting off a money tap. It was about protecting my freedom and my cognitive identity. I went straight to the trash can, retrieved the discarded power of attorney folder, and examined it with clinical detachment. The language was boilerplate, yet lethal. That night, I didn't sleep, but I wasn't weeping over the betrayal. I was fueled by an empowering sense of strategic urgency. I was planning my defense. They wanted a war? I would give them a war. Fought with logic, documentation, and the quiet dignity they had tried to strip from me. At 6 a.m., I was dressed in my sharpest clothes. My first stop was the office of Mr. Julian Weber, an attorney specializing in elder law, whose name I found in my late husband's files. Unlike the predatory Mr. Fisher, Mr. Weber's reputation was impeccable. As I recounted the entire saga, the secret wedding, the immediate financial demands, the trespassing, the guardianship threat, he listened with calm, focused intensity. "Mrs. Dubois," he said, tapping a pen on his desk, What your son and his wife are attempting is textbook elder financial abuse, and the attempt to declare you incompetent is a form of coercion. The fact that they entered your home and reviewed private documents is a violation of privacy and constitutes harassment." His words were profoundly validating, confirming that my anger was righteous and my assessment of their motives was correct. I wasn't crazy. I was the victim of a calculated crime. The emotional clarity of the confrontation was now backed by the cold, immutable weight of the law. I felt the first true flicker of hope. "We need to document absolutely everything, Mrs. Dubois," Mr. Weber instructed, his voice firm and professional. "Every transfer, every text message, every humiliating request. We will turn your immense generosity into undeniable proof of their dependency and their recent actions into evidence of their greed. We will also revise your will to protect your assets from any future attempts at manipulation." We spent the next 3 hours poring over my bank records, the sight of the $33,400 total making Mr. Weber let out a low whistle. "With this capital, you could have traveled the coast, lived comfortably, enjoyed your retirement. Instead, you financed the lives of 2 adults who didn't even respect you enough to include you." His words were a mirror, showing me the full scope of my sacrifice and the magnitude of the abuse. I left his office with a concrete multi-point plan, legal preparation, security upgrades, and a complete financial overhaul. The battle would not be fought in the emotional arena they preferred, but on the cold, hard ground of fact and law. My second stop was the local hardware store, Summers Home Goods, in the bustling suburbs near Short Pump. Mr. Summer, the owner, had known me for years. I was a regular, always buying supplies to fix their leaky faucet, replace their burnt-out light fixtures, or repair the damage from Etienne's careless moving of furniture. This time, my request was different. "Mr. Summer," I said, "I need to change all the locks on my house, every single one. I need the best, most unbreachable quality you have." He looked at me, a flicker of surprise in his eyes, but asked no questions. "No more emergencies for the kids, Mrs. Dubois?" he asked gently. "No more," I confirmed, meeting his gaze. "This time, the emergency is mine, and the repair is for my security." While I selected the most robust deadbolts, his son, Ethan, who specialized in security systems, approached. It felt like providence. "Ethan," I told him, "I also need a complete surveillance system installed, high-quality cameras, instant alert to the police. Price is not an issue. I would turn my home from an open bank vault into an impenetrable fortress." While I was finalizing the security arrangements, my phone, I had purposefully left it on, buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I knew immediately it was Liddy, using a burner phone, having discovered I had blocked her. I answered, my tone dry and noncommittal. "Speak." Her voice was now a manipulative blend of apology and desperate pleading. "Renee, it's Liddy. Please, don't hang up. Max and I have talked. The wedding was a terrible, thoughtless mistake. We want to make it up to you. How about a special private dinner at your house? We can cook for you, like we used to." The sudden shift to manufactured sentiment was sickeningly transparent. The desperation was palpable. "Liddy," I interrupted, cutting straight to the core issue. "How many months behind are you on rent now?" The quick inhalation on the other end confirmed I'd found the nerve. Well, it's only 2 months, $1,000 total. But it's not just about that, Renee. We genuinely miss you in our lives." The implied equation was obvious. $1,000 equals I genuinely miss you. "Do you miss me?" I asked directly. "Or my money? When was the last time you called me just to ask how I was doing, not because you needed a favor or a transfer?" The silence that followed was absolute. She couldn't conjure a single instance. You made your choice when you decided I wasn't special enough to be at your wedding, I finished, the words like cold steel. Now I'm making mine. I hung up, turned the phone off completely, and felt a surge of unadulterated, triumphant freedom wash over me. My next stop was a radical act of self-reclamation. I drove to a renowned beauty salon I'd always bypassed in favor of saving money. I treated myself to a full color, cut, and a luxurious manicure-pedicure. Every dollar spent on myself was a thumb in the eye to the past. Cynthia, my new stylist, chattered happily, focusing entirely on me, on my life, my desires, a refreshing change from the endless emotional labor I'd performed for Etienne and Liddy. When she was done, I saw the woman I could be, polished, ready, and utterly unburdened. As I settled the bill, I realized the cost was insignificant compared to the internal toll of my old life. The money I had previously guarded for their emergencies was now a tool for my own empowerment. I had been invisible for so long. Now I was making myself visible again, one calculated, self-serving decision at a time. The physical transformation mirrored the seismic shift in my emotional core. I arrived home that late afternoon, feeling renewed and braced for the next move. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw a woman sitting quietly on my porch steps. She was an older woman, mid-70s, with a kind, familiar face. I didn't recognize her immediately, though she looked like she belonged in the neighborhood. As I got out of the car, she stood up. "Mrs. Dubois?" she asked tentatively. "I'm Eleanor Brooks. I live just 2 houses down. We've been neighbors for years, but never properly talked. I heard very loud, upsetting voices in your house yesterday, and I got worried. Is everything all right?" Her sincere, unsolicited concern pierced the armor of my resolve. Here was a near stranger displaying more genuine care for my well-being than my own son. "Mrs. Brooks?" I said, a wave of unexpected emotion washing over me. "Please come in. I'll put on a pot of coffee, and I will tell you a story you won't believe." I led her into my kitchen, and as the coffee brewed, I recounted the entire saga. The secret wedding, Liddy's cruel words, the financial cutoff, and the lawyer's hostile visit. Eleanor listened without a single interruption, her eyes sympathetic and knowing. When I finished, she didn't offer platitudes. She simply reached out and squeezed my hand. "Renee, you did the right thing. I went through this exact scenario 5 years ago with my own daughter. I thought my money was the only thing holding us together, too." Her confession was a revelation. It wasn't just me. This was a pattern, a script of elder exploitation. "What happened with your daughter?" I asked, suddenly ravenous for information. "I cut off the money," Eleanor said simply. "The threats, the emotional blackmail, it was terrible for 6 months, but they were forced to stand on their own. They had to learn I was a person, not a resource. We now have a strained but genuine relationship based on respect, not on money." Her words were the hope I desperately needed. They provided a possible future, not just a bitter ending. "Do you think Etienne and Liddy will ever understand?" I asked, the doubt still present. Maybe not," Eleanor replied honestly. "But that's no longer your responsibility. Your responsibility now is to live your own life, unburdened." That evening, for the first time in years, I went to bed thinking solely about myself. I thought about the trips I had deferred, the art classes I had canceled, and the friends I had let drift away to always be available for their crises. Now, all those doors were open. I slept better than I had since Jean-Paul died. The next morning, Ethan and Mr. Summer arrived at 8 a.m. sharp. They were efficient, installing the new heavy-duty deadbolts and the comprehensive security camera system. As they worked, my phone continued its desperate dance, with calls from multiple unknown numbers. Liddy, still trying to circumvent my block. I had developed a powerful new skill, ignoring what did not serve my peace. Ethan, finishing the installation, showed me the controls on my phone. "Mrs. Dubois, you'll get an alert for any movement on the property. If they try to force entry, the system automatically contacts the Henrico County Police." The irony was stark. I was installing high-tech security to protect myself from my own son. But the absurdity no longer stung. It was a pragmatic necessity. While they worked, I did something else I had postponed. I called my sister, Diana, in Chicago. We hadn't truly connected in years. Our conversations were always dominated by my boastful, subtle recitations of how much I was doing for Etienne and Liddy. The financial report disguised as family news. Diana answered, her surprise genuine. "Renee, sister, it's been months. How are you?" I told her everything: the secret wedding, the humiliation, the lawyer's ambush, and my final liberating cutoff. Diana listened in silence, and her response, when it came, was a shock. "Renee, it was about time. It broke my heart to hear you constantly brag about the money, as if love was measured in dollars. Max never spoke about you with affection when I saw him. It was always, 'Mom bought me this,' or 'Mom paid for that.' You were a service provider, not a person." The pain was sharp, but necessary. Diana's words were a cleaning solvent on my infected wound of denial. "And Liddy," Diana continued, her voice hardening. "She always spoke about you in the future tense. When Renee is no longer here, we'll remodel her house. They saw you as a temporary obstacle between them and the inheritance." Her revelation hit me like a physical blow. They weren't just exploiting me. They were waiting for me to die to really live. The revelation from my sister Deanna that Etienne and Liddy viewed me as a $30,400 obstacle to their true inheritance solidified my resolve into concrete. There was no going back, no chance of genuine reconciliation. I was simply money on legs, and they were tired of waiting for me to stop walking. That evening, Eleanor came over again, this time with a thermos of coffee, a welcome sight. I shared Diana's brutal honesty. Eleanor nodded, her face grim but resolute. "They read from the same playbook, Renee. Chapter 1, make her feel indispensable. Chapter 2, create constant financial emergencies. Chapter 3, when she resists, question her mental health." We shared a dark, bitter laugh, recognizing the calculated predictability of their cruelty. The pattern was universal. "Did you ever feel guilty, Eleanor?" I asked, needing the confession from someone who had walked this path. "Every single day for the first 3 months," she admitted. "But then, I saw my daughter get a second job. Her husband stopped playing golf every weekend and started working. They learned to live within their means. More importantly, they learned that I was a person, not a resource." That single sentence was the mantra I needed. It was the core truth of my new life. That afternoon, I made an unexpected visit to Jean-Paul's grave at Hollywood Cemetery. I hadn't been to his stone in months, always citing a need to save time or money for one of their emergencies. I sat on the grass next to his headstone, pulling out weeds and replacing the dead flowers. "Robert, my love," I whispered, talking to the stone as if he were sitting beside me. "I lost myself. I thought by financing Max, I could fill the void you left, but I only taught him that love had a price. The money you left for my peace, I threw it away. But not anymore. I've learned." I stayed there for an hour, cleaning his plot, enjoying the quiet peace, finally unhurried. For the first time in years, I didn't have to rush home to solve a crisis that wasn't mine. I left feeling lighter, the connection to my true self, the woman Jean-Paul loved, reestablished. When I arrived home, my blood ran cold for the 3rd time that week. The 3 cars were back, plus a 4th I didn't recognize. Etienne, Liddy, and two other people were standing on my property, pointing toward my house, clearly agitated. I didn't get out of the car. I grabbed my phone and immediately called Mr. Weber. "They're here again, Julian, and they've brought more people." Mr. Weber's response was immediate and firm. "Stay in the car, Renee. I'm calling the police right now. I already filed for a temporary restraining order yesterday. They are not legally allowed on your property." Within minutes, Mr. Weber and two marked Henrico County police cruisers arrived. I watched from my car as the officers calmly spoke to my son and daughter-in-law. I saw Etienne gesticulate angrily, saw Liddy perform the weeping victim routine, but this time the tears held no power over me. An officer approached my car. "Ma'am, you are safe to exit. We are escorting your visitors off the property. A temporary restraining order is in place." As I stepped out, Etienne shouted from the street, his face contorted in a mix of fury and disbelief. "Mom, this is ridiculous. You can't call the police on your own family." "Family doesn't threaten lawsuits for mental incompetence, Etienne," I replied, my voice calm, the truth a sharp blade. "Family doesn't break into people's homes without permission. Family doesn't treat their mother like an ATM." Liddy screamed, "You'll pay us everything you owe us. We have bills you co-signed." Mr. Weber stepped forward, addressing them both with professional authority. "Any future communication must be through my office, and I strongly advise you to consult an attorney before making collection threats, as my client has full documentation of all voluntary payments made over 3 years." I watched them drive away, defeated but not broken. I knew the fight was far from over, but for the first time, I felt I had an army. Mr. Weber, Eleanor, and the cold, unyielding power of documentation. The next few days were characterized by a tense, fragile peace. The security cameras became my eyes. They showed Etienne and Liddy driving past, slow, methodical, as if studying my routine, trying to find the crack in the newly fortified wall. Mr. Weber had advised me to log every sighting, every attempt at contact, strengthening our case for a permanent restraining order. On Friday morning, while I was enjoying a peaceful breakfast, the doorbell rang. The camera screen showed a young woman, immaculately dressed, holding a professional folder, her smile too practiced to be genuine. This was a new escalation. "Good morning, Mrs. Renee Dubois," she announced when I opened the door. "I am Ms. Schmidt, a social investigator from the Office of Senior Services. We have received a report that you may be in an at-risk situation, and we need to conduct a wellness check." My blood ran cold. They had moved beyond private lawyers. They had weaponized the government. I knew instantly that Etienne and Liddy had filed a report alleging self-neglect or mental instability. "May I see your ID?" I asked, maintaining a calm facade. She showed me a badge that appeared legitimate. I let her in, knowing that refusing entry would only be used as further proof of paranoia. Ms. Schmidt sat in my living room, pulling out a form. "Mrs. Dubois, we have reports that you've shown significant changes in financial behavior, cut off communication with your family, and exhibited signs of paranoia by installing excessive security systems. We were told you refused necessary legal and medical help from your loved ones." Every word was a carefully curated lie, designed to paint a picture of an elderly woman in mental decline. I recognized Liddy's manipulative precision in the wording, turning my act of self-protection into proof of my sickness. "Ms. Schmidt," I said with the dignity of a woman fighting for her life, "before I answer any questions, I would like to call my lawyer." Her practiced professionalism wavered slightly. "Ma'am, this is not a legal interrogation. It's a wellness check. If you have nothing to hide, it should not be a problem." That insidious phrase, "if you have nothing to hide," fueled my anger. "I have nothing to hide," I countered, "but I have everything to protect. I will not answer any questions without legal representation." I called Mr. Weber and he arrived within 20 minutes, his expression hardening when he saw the social worker. "Ms. Schmidt," Mr. Weber began, after checking her credentials. "My client is under my legal representation. I hope you have a court order for this intrusion, because any unauthorized investigation constitutes harassment." She stammered, claiming to be acting on a report from concerned family members. Mr. Weber placed his own folder, the one containing the $33,400 documentation, on the table. "What family? The same family that tried to coerce her into signing a power of attorney? The same family that broke into her home and checked her private papers? The evidence here suggests elder financial exploitation, not mental decline." Ms. Schmidt reviewed the documents, her face growing uncomfortable. She was clearly realizing the narrative she had been given did not match the competent, articulate woman in front of her. "Mrs. Dubois?" she finally asked. "Can you explain why you abruptly stopped financial support for your son?" "Because I finally discovered they were using me," I replied, simply and powerfully. To them, I was not a mother, but a bank account. I was tired of financing the lives of people who saw me as an obstacle to their inheritance. The logic was undeniable. The truth was my shield. She closed her folder. "Mrs. Dubois, based on this conversation and the documentation, I see no indication that you are at risk or in need of intervention. I will close this case." I had won the skirmish, but Mr. Weber's grim expression told me the war was just beginning. "Renee," Mr. Weber said once the social worker's car had pulled away, the victory immediately replaced by sober reality. "This is going to escalate further. Max and Liddy are spending money they don't have on professionals to try and have you declared incompetent." He was right. Their desperation was a measure of their dependency. "What else can they do?" I asked, my voice betraying a hint of the fear I was fighting to control. "They can file a formal lawsuit for incompetence. It's expensive and difficult to win. But if they find a psychiatrist willing to testify that your sudden change in behavior is a sign of decline, a sympathetic judge could assign a temporary guardian." The thought of losing control over my own life, my money, and my future, of having Etienne control my fate, was terrifying. That afternoon, I called Diana to vent, sharing the outrageous lengths to which they were going. "Sister," Diana said, "do you see the truth? They are risking their relationship with you, spending enormous sums on lawyers, destroying their own moral reputation, all to get back to your bank account. It reveals their true character." Her words were a necessary, painful mirror. The truth was liberating, yet devastating. There was no longer any room for doubt or hope of reconciliation. To them, I had always been money on legs. That evening, Eleanor organized an emergency gathering. She brought over her friends from her garden club, Cynthia, the stylist, and two other older women, Maria and Carmen, who had faced similar family betrayals. When I told them about the threat of the incompetence lawsuit, they rallied around me. "We will testify, Renee," Maria stated firmly. "We have seen your transformation. You are clearer and stronger now than you were a year ago." Carmen, who had cut off contact with a grasping daughter, added, "Greedy children have tried to declare their parents insane since the beginning of time. But you have what many victims didn't: ironclad proof of their greed and legal counsel that believes you." Their collective wisdom and support formed an emotional army around me. I finally allowed myself to weep, not from sadness, but from a profound grief for the loss of the son I thought I had, the death of the family dream. But the tears were quickly dried by an iron determination. I would not let them strip me of my dignity and my freedom. 3 weeks later, on a quiet Thursday morning, Mr. Weber came to my house, his face grim. "Renee, they did it. They filed the formal lawsuit for mental incompetence in Henrico Family Court. They are requesting a legal guardian be assigned." The words felt like stones falling on me. My own son was attempting to legally steal my identity and my life savings. What evidence could they have? I asked, trying to remain calm. Fabricated evidence, Mr. Weber confirmed. Statements from 3 witnesses claiming erratic behavior, including a neighbor and someone they claim is your pharmacist, Mr. Green. They also submitted a statement from a Dr. Lehman claiming your refusal to cooperate with a psychiatric evaluation is proof of mental decline. The manipulation was diabolical. They had turned my instinct for self-protection into evidence of illness. My focus immediately zeroed in on the pharmacist. I need to talk to Mr. Green. Something is not right. We went to his pharmacy that afternoon. Mr. Green was surprised and nervous. I asked him directly about the statement. His face flushed. Mrs. Dubois, your daughter-in-law came in. She said she was worried. I told her you only buy vitamins and aspirin, no regular prescriptions. But she had a document. She said it was for your health insurance, confirming irregular medication purchases. I didn't know it was for a lawsuit. He had been tricked. Liddy's manipulative web knew no bounds. My own pharmacist had been co-opted. I requested a notarized statement detailing the deception, securing a critical piece of counter-evidence. The war had officially become a fight for truth against calculated lies. Our defense had to be flawless. We need our own, unimpeachable psychiatric evaluation, Mr. Weber insisted. I've booked you with Dr. Elara Moore, an expert in cognitive capacity assessment. The next day, I drove to Dr. Moore's office in downtown Richmond. Dr. Moore was a kind, sharp woman in her 50s, with eyes that held both compassion and astuteness. For 2 hours, she subjected me to a comprehensive evaluation. Memory tests, reasoning problems, questions about my financial acumen, and an emotional assessment. She didn't treat me like a potential patient. She treated me like an intelligent woman under duress. At the conclusion of the testing, Dr. Moore smiled warmly. Mrs. Dubois, your results are well above average for your age. You are not only fully competent, but your cognitive function is excellent. This case appears to be a classic example of elder financial exploitation, masked as concern. The professional validation was a profound relief, replacing the fear with a deep sense of righteous justification. I was whole, and they were the predators. Later that afternoon, I met with Eleanor and my circle of friends, my garden club army, to deliver the news. When they heard about the lawsuit, their anger was fierce, but their support was absolute. We will all testify, declared Elfrida, the wisest and oldest of the group. We've seen you thrive since you cut them off. We will tell the judge that your decision to protect yourself is the strongest sign of mental competence there is. Her words empowered me. I was not alone. I had an army of witnesses to my transformation. The saddest part, I confessed, is knowing they are willing to burn all bridges for money. There is no going back from this. Carmen, the friend who had endured similar pain, offered a quiet truth. And maybe that is for the best, Renee. Now you know exactly who they are, and you can act accordingly. That night, I cried one last time, a final necessary mourning for the son who had died in my heart, replaced by the man who saw me as an obstacle. I felt a core of cold, quiet steel settle within me. I was ready to fight for my freedom. The trial date arrived 3 weeks later. I dressed in a sharp, conservative black suit, looking at myself in the mirror. Today, more than my money was on trial. It was my dignity, my right to autonomy, my worth as a person. Mr. Weber reviewed our strategy one last time. Remember, Renee, the burden of proof is on them. They have to prove incompetence. We just have to prove they are motivated by greed. We arrived at the courthouse in the early morning. In the hallway, I saw Etienne in a new, expensive suit, and Liddy dressed in solemn black, the performance of a grieving heir. She held my gaze with a look of pure, unvarnished hatred. Their lawyer was a smooth, well-funded operator who began his opening statement by portraying me as a confused, isolated old woman who had fallen prey to manipulative new friends and predatory counsel. Every word twisted the truth. My self-empowerment became dementia. My self-protection became paranoia. Liddy was the first witness, performing an Oscar-worthy scene of tears as she described my supposed mental decline and hostility. "Your Honor," she whimpered, "Renee has always been a second mother. Seeing her confusion has been devastating." When Mr. Weber cross-examined her, the performance cracked immediately. "Mrs. Schuster, when was the last time you called my client without asking for money or a favor?" She stammered, unable to provide a date. "Is it true you told my client that you only invited special people to your wedding?" Liddy's face went crimson. "Those words were taken out of context." "What?" Mr. Weber asked, his voice sharp. "Would be the correct context for such a statement to your mother-in-law?" She had no answer. The mask had fallen, exposing the cynical calculation beneath. Etienne took the stand next, a man swearing an oath to the truth while preparing to perjure himself to steal his mother's money. It was the most painful spectacle of the day. "My mother has always been generous," he testified. "But lately she's become erratic and irrational. We believe she's being manipulated." Mr. Weber's cross-examination was devastating. "Mr. Dubois, how much money approximately have you received from your mother in the last 3 years?" Etienne mumbled an evasion. "Is it closer to 33,400? Weber pressed. Etienne wilted. "How many times have you and your wife broken into my client's house without permission, claiming worry when you were simultaneously bringing a lawyer to pressure her into signing away her financial rights?" Etienne's carefully constructed narrative shattered, exposing the naked, ugly truth of his financial motivation. Their remaining witnesses, the neighbor, Mr. Davis, who testified about my erratic cameras, and the co-opted Dr. Lehman, were swiftly discredited. Mr. Weber brought the pharmacist, Mr. Green, who openly confessed to being tricked by Liddy into signing a misleading statement. He submitted Dr. Moore's impeccable cognitive evaluation, which explicitly refuted Dr. Lehman's conclusions. Then, my army took the stand. Eleanor, Maria, and Carmen, all strong, articulate women, testified to my renewed vigor, my mental clarity, and my ability to maintain healthy relationships based on mutual respect, not finance. The contrast between their genuine concern and Etienne and Liddy's transparent greed was stark. Finally, it was my turn. I walked to the witness stand, every step a statement of dignity. Mr. Weber guided me through the entire narrative, allowing me to detail, in my own clear voice, the $33,400 expense, the exclusion from the wedding, the emotional manipulation, the invasion of my privacy, and the legal threats. "Mrs. Dubois," Mr. Weber asked for the final, critical question, "why did you decide to stop the financial support?" I looked directly at the judge, Judge Miller, a man known for his fairness. "Because I finally understood that what I was receiving from them was not love, Your Honor," I replied, my voice strong and clear. "It was a commercial transaction disguised as a family relationship. My money was welcome. I, as a person, was not." "Do you regret your decision?" he asked. "I only regret that it took me so long to make it." Etienne's lawyer tried to fluster me, but I answered every question with cold, factual precision. He could not make me appear confused, only strong. Mr. Weber's closing argument was a powerful synthesis of the evidence. "Your Honor, this is not a case about an incompetent old woman. It is the story of a woman who, in an act of profound mental clarity, found the strength to free herself from years of financial and emotional abuse. The plaintiffs have presented no medical evidence of incompetence. They have only presented their frustration that their source of income decided to exercise her legal and moral right to protect herself. Judge Miller retired to deliberate. The wait was agonizing, the courtroom ticking by like a bomb. When he returned, his expression was serious, but his gaze was level and unwavering. After reviewing all the evidence, he began, "It is abundantly clear to this court that Mrs. Renée Dubois is in full possession of her mental faculties. Her financial decisions, however painful for the petitioners, are rational and within her rights. The evidence overwhelmingly suggests that this lawsuit is motivated by financial gain rather than genuine concern." He paused, letting the finality of his judgment settle over the silent room. "The court completely denies the request for guardianship. I had won. I had won my money, my dignity, and my freedom." The gavel cracked, its sharp sound ringing out the finality of my victory. I felt a surge of pure, unadulterated relief, an emotional wave so powerful it nearly brought me to my knees. I had not just won a lawsuit, I had reclaimed my identity from the thieves who tried to steal it. Etienne and Lydie were already on their feet, murmuring furiously with their defeated lawyer. Lydie shot me a final venomous look of pure hatred before marching out. Etienne paused at the back of the courtroom. Our eyes met one last time, and for a fleeting, agonizing moment, I saw a flicker of the lost boy, a hint of something that might have been regret. But it was too late. I turned away, the chapter of my life with him now closed, sealed by his own choices. Mr. Weber shook my hand, his smile broad and genuine. "You won, Renée. Not just the case, but your life back." Eleanor was waiting for me outside, her face beaming. That night, she and my friends organized a spontaneous celebration at my house. We toasted to justice, to freedom, and to the powerful sisterhood of women who had found strength in shared pain. "Renée," Elfrida said, raising her glass, "today you didn't just win a trial, you won back your future." Her words resonated deep within me. The path ahead, once obscured by obligation and guilt, was now blindingly clear. I could travel, create, love, and live without fear or manipulation. 3 months later, I sold my house in Richmond. It was a beautiful home, but it was also a tomb filled with memories of the woman who sacrificed herself. I relocated to a small, bright condo near the river in Charlottesville, close enough to the mountains for hikes and to a vibrant city center. I took half of my remaining savings and created a foundation in Jean-Paul's memory, dedicated to protecting the elderly from familial financial abuse. With the other half, I began to live. I took painting classes, joined a hiking club with Eleanor, who had moved closer to her daughter but often visited, and booked a long-deferred trip to the Pacific Northwest. I never heard directly from Etienne or Lydie again. Through mutual acquaintances, I heard fragments. They had been forced to move to a much smaller, less fashionable apartment, and Lydie was working for the first time in years. The forced adversity, the one thing my boundless generosity could never provide, was teaching them the value of honest work and true independence. I felt no triumph, only a quiet, detached hope that they might someday understand that my cutoff was the only path left for them to grow. Some nights, standing on my new balcony, looking at the distant lights of the city, I think about the woman I was a year ago. Fearful, manipulated, and believing she had to buy love. That woman is gone. In her place is a woman who at 72 years old has finally learned the most fundamental truth. True love never has a price tag, and freedom, the freedom to choose who you are and where your love goes, is worth any cost. My name is Renée Dubois, and I have finally learned to protect myself. The final verdict brought me justice, but the real victory of the reckoning of Renée was reclaiming my dignity and my life. I finally understood that true love never has a price. Now that you've heard my full story, I'd love to hear your final thoughts. Which lesson from my journey resonated with you the deepest? The need for strong boundaries, the power of documentation, or the kindness of unexpected friends? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. And as a final, humbling request, please let me know where in the world you're watching from today. Knowing this message of self-worth travels across the globe is the greatest reward of all.